Okay, so they have left the upper room. They have had the Last Supper. They've done all that. Mark 14:32. They went to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He took Peter, James, and John along with him, and he began to be deeply distressed and troubled. I guess the others were waiting at the entrance to the garden. I'm not entirely certain. "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death," he said to them. "Stay here and keep watch." Going a little farther, he fell to the ground and prayed that, if possible, the hour might pass from him. "Abba, Father," he said. Abba would be basically their equivalent of the word daddy. It was a word a child learned to use to address his father as he was first learning how to talk. "Everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me. Yet, not what I will, but what you will." Jesus is not going to have his prayer or his request granted here. I mean, he'll have his prayer answered, but the answer will be no. It was not in God's will it was not in the Father's will for the Son to not drink of this cup. But as you can tell here, when he got into the garden and the hour was at hand, Jesus didn't really want to do it. But because the Father willed him to, he did. Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. "Simon," he said to Peter, "are you asleep? Could you not keep watch for 1 hour? Watch and pray so you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the body is weak." So he must have prayed more than just those few words. He was gone long enough for all three of the other men to fall into sleep. So he must have been off by himself for a while, more than it would take to just say those 2 lines. Or 3 lines. That was clearly just a summary of what he said. Once more he went away and prayed the same thing. When he came back, he again found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. They did not know what to say to him. Returning the 3rd time, so he went away twice and had 3 separate prayer sessions. This would be midnight-ish. He said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Enough! The time has come. Look, the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer." Just as he was speaking, Judas, he might even have been seeing him come. I'm not sure exactly. I don't know the layout of this place. But as he was speaking, he might have even seen the crowd coming in the distance. Judas, one of the 12, appeared. With him was a crowd, armed with swords and clubs, sent from the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders. This would be the temple guard. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. "The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him and lead him away under guard." Going at once to Jesus, Judas said, "Rabbi," and kissed him. The men seized Jesus and arrested him. Then one of those standing near, and we'll find out from John that this was Peter, drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. He probably was aiming for his head. He was probably trying to cut off the man's head and only got the ear. And we find out from the other Gospels this was Peter. At the time Mark is writing this, it may still be advantageous not to mention that Peter had done this, because it could get Peter into trouble. Peter might still have been alive, and may have still been a possibility that he could get into trouble, or maybe cause the church to get into trouble, if he was identified as the one who apparently attempted to kill this man. But by the time we get to John, Peter has already died, and there is no longer, if there ever was, and I don't know for certain if there was, but if there ever was a need for secrecy, By the time of John, there was no longer a need. Am I leading a rebellion, said Jesus, that you have come out with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I was with you, teaching in the temple courts, and you did not arrest me. But the scriptures must be fulfilled. Then everyone deserted him and fled. They were not willing to die with him at this point. They said they were. All the others said the same. Peter insisted emphatically, even if I have to die with you, I'll never disown you. And all the others said the same. But none of them meant it. None of them were ready to do that yet. They all turned and fled. Now, we don't read about it here. We do read about it, I think, in Luke. I'm not sure, that he healed this man's ear that was cut off by the errant swing of one of his disciples. Now, they should have issued a charge at the time of the arrest. They did not. It was one of the many ways in which this whole process was conducted legally, is that they did not charge Jesus with any kind of crime when they arrested him. A young man wearing nothing but a linen garment was following Jesus. When they seized him, he fled naked, leaving his garment behind. Now, this is the only time in any of the Gospels where this is mentioned, these two verses right here. It does not appear anywhere in any of the others, leading many to think that this young man was probably Mark himself. And I think that's probably true. This was probably Mark. The Last Supper was probably held in the upper room of his house. Not, it wouldn't have been his house, he was a young man, but the house that he was living in with his family, his father. He probably woke up when the disciples left. He probably had gone to sleep after his own supper, and woke up when the disciples were leaving. Maybe in the commotion of them leaving, he just woke up, put on a linen garment, and was following them to see where they were going, and then fled naked. Probably. Stands to reason. We don't know. It's impossible to say for sure. But that is probably what happened. They took Jesus to the high priest, and all the chief priests, elders, and teachers of the law came together. Peter followed him at a distance, right into the courtyard of the high priest. There he sat with the guards and warmed himself at the fire. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin, or council, were looking for evidence against Jesus, so they could put him to death, but they did not find any. So not only did they not have a charge against him when they arrested him, they don't even have a crime to base a trial on. They don't even have anything to actually have a trial for. Many testified falsely against him, but their statements did not agree. Then some stood up and gave this false testimony against him. We heard him say, I will destroy this man-made temple, and in 3 days will build another not made by man. Yet even then, their testimony did not agree. Now, we have not heard Jesus say anything like that in the Gospel of Mark. We did hear him say in Mark 13, at the beginning of that chapter, give a prophecy of the temple coming down. Now, I don't know if he said that in public or he was just around his disciples when he said that. I'm not sure. But that's the closest we come in the Gospel of Mark, or Matthew and Luke, to a statement from Jesus that reflects that. But he must have said it. Now, we do get that in John. John does give us a story where he says this. He probably puts that in there, partially because he knew the other three Gospels didn't actually include an incident where Jesus ever said that. Obviously, he had said it, and the other three Gospels are kind of insinuating that he said it, but none of them ever give an instance or record an event in which he did say that, but John does. Yet even then, their testimony did not agree. Then the high priest stood up before them and asked Jesus, Are you not going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you? But Jesus remained silent and gave no answer. Again the high priest asked him, Are you the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One? I am, said Jesus. And you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One, and coming on the clouds of heaven. Now this goes back to what he was talking about in Mark 13, about seeing the Son of Man coming in clouds of power and great glory. But again, that doesn't refer to the last day of history. It refers, in this case, specifically to his coming in judgment on the Jewish nation, which would happen in about 40 years. In the short term, it refers to him being escorted into the presence of the Ancient of Days, as we read about in Daniel 7. In my vision at night I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All peoples, nations, and men of every language worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. This is going to start happening when Jesus is lifted up and crucified, and then rises from the dead, and is ascended in heaven. And he will come in judgment against the nation of Israel in 40 years. So that's what he's talking about. He's not talking about the end of the world. In this case, he's talking specifically about his resurrection and ascension and the establishment of the kingdom. And then 40 years later or so from this point in time, coming in judgment against Israel, which these men, of course, are the authorities in Israel. The high priest tore his clothes. Why do we need any more witnesses? He asked. You have heard the blasphemy. What do you think? They all condemned him as worthy of death. Now, we'll find out later that there were a couple of dissenters. There were, 2 men will prepare his body for burial after his death. Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea, and they didn't consent to this decision. They may not have been present for this trial. It's possible that this trial, which was thrown together and hastily held in the middle of the night, they weren't present for. But not every single member of the 70-seat Sanhedrin was in favor of this decision. They all condemned him as worthy of death. Then some began to spit at him. They blindfolded him and struck him with their... Is that... Okay. Just want to make sure that this is working. And said, prophesy. We'll find out later they were specifically asking him to say who hit them. Prophesy and say who hit you. And the guards took him and beat him. While Peter, one of the servant girls of the high priest, came by. Now the Gospels differ on who it is who identifies Peter. The Gospels actually disagree, or they present different sides of the story when it comes to who exactly it is who confronts Peter. In this case, it's recorded as being one of the servant girls of the high priest came by. When she saw Peter warming himself, she looked closely at him. You also were at that Nazarene, Jesus, she said. But he denied it. I don't know or understand what you're talking about, he said, being examined more thoroughly. And the rooster crowed. Some early manuscripts include that the rooster crows here. When the servant girl saw him there, she said again to those standing around, this fellow was one of them. Again, he denied it. After a little while, those standing near said to Peter, surely you are one of them, for you are a Galilean. He began to call down curses on himself, and he swore to them, I don't know this man you're talking about. Immediately the rooster crowed the second time. Then Peter remembered the word Jesus had spoken to him. Before the rooster crows twice, you will disown me 3 times. And he broke down. He said he would follow Jesus all the way to the death. They all said the same. All the others agreed. None of them meant it. None of them were prepared to do that yet. And Peter did go back into the courtyard of the temple of the high priest's house. He did go that far. But when push came to shove, he fell. When push came to shove, he did not remain standing in defiance. He crumpled like a leaf under a foot. And let's go on and keep reading. This recording is having trouble, but it seems like it is still going, so you know what, let's go ahead and stop there.